continue. Or bim, boom, boom. Welcome back. Before we start with the next talk from Areny, I would like to show you the Tryton t-shirts. They are really great. I extra picked my size S, and I find that they are looking good, and on the back side they are even more impressive. You can order them obviously or via internet. Just write a mail to the Tryton Foundation and order one. I think you will receive it soon. So next talk, Areny. The projector?
Well, hello everyone. I'm Albert from Nantic. I don't have a presentation today. I think it's going to be quite short. What I wanted to present is Papyrus, which is a new module. In fact, it will be 2 modules. We have developed the first one, and it should be running in production when 2 people in this room feel we should start to use it. And I'm going to present another module that is named Printer. Okay. So the idea is to solve a problem that most companies have, is that at some point they receive documents, usually and first in paper, and they want to archive them. Okay. They want to store them. The typical use cases are 2. One is invoices, supplier invoices. The accountant receives the invoice in paper. They introduce the information in Tryton, and ideally they want that paper to be available as attachment in Tryton. Okay? The other typical use case is in the warehouse when you receive goods from the supplier, or a customer returns goods, and you have the shipment document from the supplier. And apart from introducing the reference in the field in Tryton, you want to store that document for reference in the future. Okay? There are probably more use cases in other companies, but these 2 or 3 are the most usual ones, and almost every company has them. In the case of invoices, it's also nowadays quite usual to receive it in a PDF, in email. So we will see later other things that we can work on in the future. Okay? So for the case of invoices, for example, what we did is that we created a system in which the accountant can have a small printer with a small it's a printer specialized to printing labels, okay? And there are some printers that have a feature that it's named peel-off, which basically you've got the label, which is sticky, and you don't have to separate the label from the paper it's on, okay? Because it comes out of the printer, and you just pick it and stick it in the paper. Okay? So to do that, in fact, we did it a lot of years ago on OpenERP already, so we knew that worked. We created a report in Tryton for each case, for invoices. Okay, I've got a customer invoice here, but you know, supplier and customer invoices are the same model in Tryton, so it's basically the same. We created a small report here named Papyrus barcode, and it prints a barcode. This two-dimensional barcode should be sent to the printer. Okay, and of course this operation should be fast. You know the number. We use a two-dimensional barcode because it's much more robust than a traditional barcode when being scanned later. Because of course we want the accountant to put that stick in the paper, and then another one in another paper, etc. And when they have all the pile of papers, they put it on the ADF, it's named, in the scanner, and the feed reads all the documents, and we will feed them to Tryton. Okay? So again, it's a 2D barcode to make it more robust. So we require a lower resolution in the scanner and still be able to recognize it. So as I was saying, we need that operation be very fast and print it. Okay? So what we need is to send information directly to the printer, to send the document directly to the printer. For that, we created a model that it's named printer, and it has two features. On one side, you've got the printers. The list of printers you see here, which is just one, is picked from the Cubes server, the printing server of the Linux server that Tryton is running on. And there's a scheduler action which reads any new printers that appear in the system. Okay? So here's the list. Of course, you can check it. It's true. Okay. Oops. This is the web interface of the Cubes printer, of the Cubes server. Okay. Of course, I don't have a printer here. It's the one from our office. Okay. Okay, so I said that printer has two features. One is the list of printers, but that's useless in itself. The other feature is that it has a role system similar to the one you will find in Tryton, in price lists and things like that. It has the same way of working, in which you define a matching section and an action to do with it. In the matching section, you can say, okay, all documents for a given user should be sent to the printer, and the printer to be used is this one. Or you can say, for this user and this specific report, for example, the Papyrus barcode, okay? You've seen there are several Papyrus barcodes. This one is the one of the invoice, but there's also the one of the shipment in, the supplier shipment, or the customer returning goods, okay? That's why there are several of them. So you can say this report for all users, in this case, is going to be sent directly to the printer, and it will be sent to this printer. You can also say this report should be sent directly to the printer, but do not specify the printer, and then define another rule that says that for this user, you should use this default printer, and for this other user, you should use this other default printer. So it's quite flexible. And you can also use a network address. If the same user is connecting from several um, computers in the company, you can use also the network address, okay? So that can be used by any report, but nowadays, as long as this report is just per report, okay? It should be fairly easy to do, to use it with other reports. Okay, so with this, what we get is that the report that the user prints here is sent directly to the printer. Okay. There were no bugs yesterday, so we had to see it at least one today. That's all for printer. And now let's talk a little bit about Papyrus, how it's structured, okay? The first thing you need to do is to define a queue. You have to think of a company that can have several document scanners, or you could even feed it from an email address or whatever you want. So you have to define several queues. It's important to define a queue because in the case of an invoice that has several pages, what we will do is to put the label only on the first page. And the other ones will be considered to be part of the same invoice of the previous, the one that had the label before, okay? So having a queue makes it impossible for different papers coming from different scanners to mix, okay? And a queue has this configuration, it has a name, and it has a type. This type allows you to import individual pages, which is the case of the scanner. You should feed it with individual pages, okay? Because there must be an algorithm saying, okay, this page is part of the same document as the pages before, for example. Or you can have a queue based on documents, okay? Sorry, based on documents. A queue based on documents might be a good example, the case when invoices are received by email, in which your supplier already sends you a PDF document with multiple pages. There's no need for deciding into which document each page goes, okay? In this case, this is a page queue, so you must define a page sequence and a document sequence. If it's a document, you don't need the page sequence. And you define a source directory and a storage directory. Once you've defined this, you can use this process button, which will create pages, okay? Right now, we don't have any pages here, but let me open okay. I have Dolphin, a file browser here, and this is the TMP source directory, which is configured here, okay? And so we should be able, if everything works as expected, the file has been moved. It's no longer here. And if I go to the document page, it has picked from this queue this document, okay? When I go into one of the pages, I see its image, and I have a small workflow where I can push the inspect button, okay? Once inspected, it should work, but it doesn't, okay? I picked the wrong document, sorry. Oh, okay, yeah. Now I pick the right document. So I process again. There's a new document in the queue. This one is named Papyrus. And if I now did it correctly, okay, now it's done. And it has scanned the document through different tools. It uses an OCR application that is named Tesseract. It's probably the most well-known open source OCR available. There is this one, which is DMTX. It's a barcode, a 2D barcode reader, also open source. And if it's a PDF file, it also extracts the text of a PDF file. So it has several ways of scanning the document and getting it. If it can fill the text part, if it's a PDF file, for example, or it will show you the boxes. And these are the coordinates where it found the barcode. Okay, it says it's type barcode, and this is the text that it obtained. That means that the barcode you saw before, it has the AI, that's for account invoice -1, which is the ID of the invoice that you saw. Okay. Once it's been inspected, you can process it, and if it works as it did, it says that the state of the document becomes processed. In this case, we were working on a page, so processing a page makes it decide to which document this page should go into. In this case, it's very simple because we just have the label, so it simply created a new document for it. I'm going to close these tabs. Oh, sorry. We've got the document here. As you see, the document has the same workflow: pending, inspected, and processed. In this case, it's left inspected for the user to decide. In a document, you also see the number, the reference, which has been fit by the process of inspecting and processing the page. It says from which queue it came. And we've got the image. In this case, it's only a single page. But if we've got several pages, you can move from one page to the other, either by changing the number here or pressing the button previous and next. Okay? So everything was okay, and I can process the document. And in this case, as it was processed, it means that it found the invoice, and it attached the document to the invoice. So we've got an attachment here. You will see that there are two documents. This is because I already tested it before, and I can see it. So the idea is that I would use it from an invoice or a shipment, etc. Okay? So that's Papyrus. It's nothing more than that. But we are working, this is work in progress. So this one, I will show you just the configuration because it's not finished. And it tries to go farther than Papyrus. In Papyrus, it requires manual intervention. You still have to put the information that comes from the invoice of the supplier. But, and that's the way we would recommend it to do when you have the invoice in paper, because OCRs are usually not good enough to allow you to pick all the information from an invoice in a safe way, or with a good ratio, okay? But fortunately, nowadays, you can, or you receive many invoices in PDF format, and there's no need for an OCR in this case. Okay, so I set up another database with what we called Papyrus pattern, which is, of course, an extension, a module that inherits Papyrus and hooks into its workflow to add additional processing of information. I loaded it with a bunch of documents you already saw in the other database. Okay. You will see here, these are real invoices that we received at Nantic. Okay, I think I've got one here. Oh, the next one. No, the next. It's going to be soon. Okay, so you see this example of a 2-page document. So it's reasonably easy to move to one page and the other. All right, this one is completely scanned. It's not a good example of where we are going to pick information from. Okay, but this is a true PDF document, so I can inspect the document. As I said at the beginning, we've got document queues and page queues. In this case, this was loaded using a document queue, okay? Inspection in this case, it's going to take longer, but at the end, we've got all the text of the PDF because it's using PDF to text application to extract information, okay? So what we are building here is a way to provide the system with regular expressions and patterns to allow it to extract information, okay? As I said, it's work in progress. We did a first prototype that was able to, through the configuration that you will see now, detect which model of document we were talking about. It detected it was an invoice, and telling you the values for each one of the fields. For example, number here, and it showed you the number, and total invoice amount, and it would show you here the total invoice amount or the date, for example. Okay, these are the usual information you want, apart from the customer, of course. And it was able to do that and then create a template from there on. So it detected which kind of document, and then we created a template so it was faster to recognize it. And what we are working on, and I will tell you the expressions, but what we are working on is a system in which the user can provide the fields that the system was not able to find by itself and create a pattern automatically out of it from other patterns we give the system. Okay? I'm going to show you more or less the structure that we have right now, but as I said, it's going to change in the future. Okay? On the first place, we've got a place to configure regular expressions and give them a name or description to be used in other places. So we don't have to show always the regular expression to a user which might be advanced but might not be able to write regular expressions. So we can tell, okay, this regular expression is capable of detecting this kind of date. Okay, this is just an example date, okay? Or this one detects this kind of number, or this one or more non-space characters, or I think, don't know if there's another one. No, maybe not. Okay, and the first one, which is a number with a comma here, a colon here, and then a dot. Okay. In another place, we define patterns. I don't know if any of you knows Grok, G-R-O-K. It's a pattern matching library. It's very small. I think it was implemented in Ruby, maybe, or Java. I'm not sure. It's the library used in Logstash. Thank you. I don't know if some of you know Logstash is a log processing application in which one of the main the things that that people love most is grok. And it's pretty simple concept, which is just giving names to regular expressions. So when you write a regular expression for a field, here you will say, I have got a field that is named total, and instead of each time I want to say, you can pick a number from here, instead of writing the regular expression for the number, you write a name of that regular expression. It's as simple as that, grok. Okay? So what we did is the same. So you can write regular expressions that are much easier to write than having to put here each time the expression I showed you here. Okay? But what we did in the pattern is that we allow users to define more than one expression. Because you can have a date, and that date can have several formats. Or you can have a number, and it can match several regular expressions. Okay? So you can give a pattern several regular expressions, and the system will try to match with all of them. If any of these regular expressions for a reference field matches, it will match. Okay? So when I create a field, I can say, okay, look for the text total factura, colon, any number of spaces, and then get the amount here. As I put parentheses, the system knows that this is where the value I'm looking for must be taken from, okay? And we also enriched not only with regular expressions that have a text on the left and something else on the right, because that is good for some examples, as the one, no, it's not good in this example anywhere, in fact, okay? Well, it could be this one, okay, date of operation, colon, and the date. But in other cases, you've got the text above and the, or the title above and the text you want to extract below, okay? So when you define a rule for a field, you define if it's of type horizontal, you've got a regular expression in this case. You can define if it's vertical, in this case you will define an expression above, an expression below. You can tell the system to lowercase the text before processing, so I don't have to write, I don't mind if it's total factura and total is uppercase and factura is lowercase. I just want to match total factura however it is written, but you can configure this expression. You can leave it unchanged, lowercase or uppercase. And you can also tell the system in which direction it should scan it, okay? Because maybe you want, you will see 100 invoices and you will see 99 different invoices. It's, every invoice is different. And you say, okay, quantity cannot be that different. And you see the first invoice, okay, they decided to use an abbreviation, that's normal. You see another one, it's a company that transports people, it provides bus services, so it says people. And it's a company that moves cases and says cases per unit, or units per case, and number of cases, so there's a lot of cases, okay? So in some cases, you can have the same label twice, okay? Invoice and invoice in two places, and you know, okay, you say, okay, I want you to pick the one in the bottom, because I want the total number, because in the total number, instead of saying total, they put invoice for whatever reason they found, okay? So you need some configuration to be possible here, okay? And as you can see, you can define for a field several rules, which at its turn have their patterns which have several options. Okay? So the system tries all possibilities, and when it finds the one matching, it then creates from there on a template which will store, okay, with this pattern we name whatever. It will fit this document, this model, and this field matches using this specific rule. Okay? For example, this specific rule and matching one of the specific expressions of the pattern. Okay? So it builds patterns. Okay? As I said, that's work in progress. We did the first prototype and it worked, but now we thought of other ways of making the system smarter, because now you have to write all the possible, if one company says total, you have to write total. If another one says total but included, you have to create an expression total but included. But what we want to build is a system in which the user, the system doesn't find the field, but the user fills in the field. And when you put the amount or the date is 3 of January of 2019, it will say, okay, can I create a rule that makes me find this date each time? And so it should be able to create a rule in which it says, if above the date I have the text data, I can match this document. Okay? That's the idea. So we are able to create a system in which we do not have, or the users do not have to create rules for each invoice. Okay? So that's it. I don't know if you've got any questions. No?
Have you looked at the Papyrus format, which
Yep.
embeds this level file in the...
But the problem is that the supplier needs to provide it to you.
Is it not yet used?
Not in our experience. Very few people, at least in Spain, I don't know in other countries, at least in Spain it's being used by very, very few people. In fact, the customers that ask for electronic invoice from Tryton, it's just because they work for public administration, which require them. There's no one else using it. So requiring all suppliers, in many cases they will be very small and things like that. Right now, I don't think it's going to work. In fact, we talked to a customer and they are automatically sending all their invoices to an email address of us. And one of the first invoices we received, I looked at it and it was an Excel file, an XLX file. So I said, okay, this is not going to work ever. So it's difficult.
There is a company in Germany, they are doing something like this. You take a picture of an invoice and then you send it to them and they send you back the data of it.
Yeah. There are, I know two cases. One is Sage, you know Sage software. They've got a program they name Scan that does this from scanned documents. And I have two versions. One, some people say it works great, some say that it doesn't. But in that case, they only pick these totals I mentioned. Our idea is to be able to capture tables too.
Line elements?
Yeah. I don't think you can create a robust application that does that from an OCR scanner nowadays. We talked to a customer that, to a company which specializes in OCR and this kind of stuff, and it's not cheap, and anyway, you don't have a very good ratio of, for the cost, it's very difficult to implement. And there's also a company in Spain that does what you say. You send them the invoices, they have people putting information in, and they return it to you. But again, it's only the totals. So what we want to do is first have something working that works only on the totals and the main fields, but we should be able to go to the rows, because that brings a lot of value, much more value, because you can match lines, and there are companies that have thousands and thousands of lines each day. So that is, in Spain, the companies that use a scan usually are accounting agencies that do the work for their customers. And in this case, you just want the total. You're not controlling your supplier, that everything is invoiced and at the right price. They just introduce the information and that's it. So I think we should be more ambitious than that.
Why do you consider that it has to be developed inside the ERP and not as a kind of pre-processing of the incoming documents?
Well, we use Tryton because it allows us to do all you have seen. Of course, the processing is Python code, but it allows us to give a user interface. Otherwise, I would have to create a web application or whatever to do that. And
I'm not sure I get your point. I mean that if in a company you have an income for all the documents,
mm-hmm.
and they are scanned and sent to the different departments. Even if you develop something reusing Tryton as a support for application, should it be inside the ERP part of the company? I mean, your module could be also on the Tryton, which is independent from the ERP.
Oh, I'm not sure I get it. I mean, it's a new menu entry, so you could use Papyrus without the rest of the ERP.
Yes, and as a preprocessor.
But one of the advantages of having in the ERP, that maybe this answers your question, is when you will want to find the customer, you need the database available, because not everything is extracting text. You need that text to be validated. So if I find here, this is the VAT code for the company, ideally I should check whether this VAT is the one of the company, for example, or the one of the supplier. So if I have the database available, I can do it in a more robust way. Or if I want to process the lines here, I will check the purchase lines and see if I find that product in the purchase lines pending to be received, and I can show the user this was found in this purchase line, and this one is not found, or this one has a different price from the one of the purchase. So having all this information, I think it's much better to have it in Tryton, because applications that do it, as I said, I talked to a company before going that way. I talked to a company that specializes in that, and they have a web interface, but then you, apart from training the system and try to make good ratios, which is difficult, you also need to supply all the information. So again, you avoid this. This is not the worst part, but it's an advantage to having it here. Okay. Part of this was inspired by a project I found, which is developed in Python. Can't remember the name. I can look at it if somebody is interested. But the idea of using these patterns on the left and the right was taken from there. It's open source, but I think it kind of stopped. They have some patterns. So they created the part of the templates I mentioned at the end. They don't try to guess anything. They create templates for lots of invoices, and they have some for Spain. They have quite a few for France, because I think the project was part of people in France, Germany, different countries, okay? And they create expressions. But I don't think it works in many, many cases, because as you saw in this invoice, the pattern of having the data, header above and data below is not supported. So you need to create more rules. And they don't, as I said, they don't try to build templates out of the information in the inbox.
I very much like the simple workflow. It's very easy to understand, I find. And so the usual way to use it in a company is to start from the scratch. You have nothing is no rules, nothing is encoded. You should start with an invoice and you just map the fields, and then it should create a rule of it.
Well, it will depend how this prototype ends up. When we first thought of it, we thought that we were going to build all the rules and somehow share them between customers, but it's a little bit difficult probably. And then we thought that maybe we could be able to create new rules so the system learned somehow without artificial intelligence. It's not necessary. But in fact, we need to test it on the field. That's why, apart from using our invoices, we are collecting invoices from another customer, which should have a lot of them, and we need test cases.
You started to talk about that, but did you think about using deep learning for that?
No.
Because I think we have like, of course,
But
probably more.
You need lots of invoices for deep learning, and I think you can have something more predictable without using deep learning. I mean, you can create a system that is capable of creating its own rules without going to deep learning, in which you will need lots of invoices. And maybe with a more simpler schema, you can create a template out of 1 or 2 invoice examples, which might not be, it needs to be investigated, in fact. Thank you then.
So, we have half an hour left. I would say not half an hour, quarter, 50 minutes, because we go to the roof after this.